Today I'll show you some exercises and some stretches to help you work your splits. Start by sitting cross-legged on your mat and rolling your ribs around to the right and back behind you. Again, roll it around, all the way, trying to hit all the corners, side, front, side, and back. Again, circle your ribs, and one more time, circle them all the way around. Find the center and reverse roll the ribs the other way, pushing them forward when you come to the front, to the sides, and then back. Big circles, beginning to get some blood flowing through the spine and through our hip flexors as we roll all the way around. Come back to center. Inhale, lift your right arm up and over, take a side stretch. Both your sit bones should stay down. See if you can stack your shoulders on top of each other and look under your top arm. Inhale, back to center. Exhale, fold the other way. Again, getting a side stretch, also dropping both hip bones down and sitting on both of your sit bones. Inhale, back to center. Inhale, lift both your arms over your head, stretch, look up, little arch, and then come back down through prayer. Sandwich the soles of your feet together and shift your weight from one sit bone to the other, rocking side to side. Then come back to center, press open through your hips so your knees will drop down, and then lift up through your upper body. Reach your chest forward, try to push your elbows into your knees, or you can continue to reach forward, place your hands down in front of you. Slowly move into this. We're not going to go really deep because we're still warming up. This is just to help open up our hips a little bit. We'll do a lot of hip opening and rotations today to try to figure out how to rotate the hip when we're supposed to be in our splits. Hands behind the knees, close your knees together, come onto all fours. Make circles with our ribs. Ribs will shift and then they'll go down and then to the left and pull up and around. So we're circling it out. And this is using the whole spine, all the way from your tailbone through your back. Head and neck are also involved. Circle it to the right, to the left, pull it up and around. So it's almost like a cat-cow. Change directions. Similar positions as in a cat-cow, but we're rounding and rolling the spine in circles. Really trying to activate the pelvis, especially into the lower back. Come back to center and begin to shift your weight forward over your hands and back. You don't have to sit all the way down when you go back, just towards your heels, forward and backward, forward and backward. Pull your belly button in. Shift your weight all the way back so you're in a child's pose, really trying to put your sit bones onto your heels. You'll do this by tucking the pelvis, creasing deeply in your front hip flexors, and allowing your lower back to round. Your arms are extended, your elbows are straight, and your head is down on the mat. Beautiful. Roll yourself back up to your tabletop. Right leg is going to step forward and find a 90-degree angle in both your front and your back leg. The first time we do this, I am going to show you all the modifications with the blocks, and the second time I'll do it without. Tuck your pelvis underneath you. Press into your left front thigh. Hands will go behind your head, elbows wide. We'll hold this here for 30 seconds. What we're working on is getting a stretch through the front body. So you should feel this stretching your quad and your hip flexor on your left side. You want to really, really tuck the tailbone to find that quad stretch, and then pull your belly button back towards your spine so you feel as though your lower back is going to be placed flat on a wall behind you. Press firmly through your front heel to push your weight backward so you can tuck more underneath to work on opening your left front side. Release. And blocks, both blocks are going to go on either side of your foot. You can do level 2 or you can move it down to level 1. You'll reach your left arm up and over to take a side stretch. You'll feel this really deeply through your hip flexor and your inner thighs. If you don't need the block and you can touch the floor, you can feel free to move the block and just place your hand down on the mat. Keep squeezing your front leg in towards you. And then hand goes down. Left hand goes onto the block as you reach up and over with your right. You'll find you'll have more range of motion as you stretch to this side. And each one of these we hold for about 20 seconds. Really working on opening up the front side of the body because we need to have that back leg in our split really open to be able to sit down all the way. Lift yourself back up and over. Find 90 degrees in both your legs. Tuck your tailbone under, then release and press forward. Push it back, tuck under, release to come forward. Tuck and press, release and sink. Keep your hips square as possible. Tuck and release. Press to tuck, release to sink. Press it back, sink it down. 10 total of these. Tuck and sink. Press and tuck, sink and release. As you sink and release, think about spreading the legs apart, especially those inner thighs. Push it back, tuck, release. Hands down. Move the blocks up to level 2. Shift your hips back, square them off. You can also move down to level 1 if you want. Reach your chest forward, extend your leg, flex your foot. For this particular stretch, I do not want you to fold your body so far down towards your legs. I really want you to think about squaring your hips, making your leg absolutely straight, pull up through your quads, and then lengthen your spine out so it's straight. No curvature in the lower back, no rounding in the upper back. So straight line from your tailbone out to the top of your neck. Keep reaching and really flex your toes back towards you, and that will help to straighten your extended front leg. Push your back hip forward, pull your front hip back. So you've got this squaring action in your hips. Now we'll point the toe down to the floor and then flex it back up. Point it down, flex it back up. Point to flex. Weight will shift a little forward as you point and then pull back as you flex the foot. 10 total up and down with these. Working a little deeper into our hamstrings, which also need to be very open for a split. Shift the weight forward, move both the blocks on the inside of your thigh and drop down to a hip blaster. If you want, you can also move the blocks down to level 1. And again, if you don't need the blocks, you're welcome to just use your hands on the mat. Squeeze your inner thighs together towards each other and sink your back hip down towards the mat. If you could place your hip, the front of your hip on the mat, that's where you're aiming, to sink really, really low. Always watch that you're not dumping weight into your lower spine, so you're actively pulling up through your belly button and closing the ribs. It's just activating that kind of pulling in so that you're not dumping weight. But as we go into the split, there will be an arch through your back. Anytime your leg goes behind you, your back has to move into that arch position. But you don't want to move it and dump your weight into it. You want to make sure you're still activating the front side of your body. Again, this is a 30-second stretch, so keep holding and breathing, trying to relax down into it. And for this one, I also want you to keep your chest lifted. Tuck your back toes, and your elbows will come down onto your blocks. If you are on level 2, keep it to level 2 and put your elbows on the blocks. If you're on level 1, put your elbows on that level, or if you don't need, put them on the floor. Your back leg will extend as straight as possible. Press through your back heel. Separate your inner thighs. Pull them apart. Your back leg is shooting back. Your front leg is pulling forward. Getting a really big opening through your hip flexor through your inner thighs and maybe even a little into your quad. Both your hip bones should point down towards the mat so you are square. On your back leg, make sure that back hip isn't opening and rotating behind you. It should be pointed down. A 30-second hold here, and you might start to shake because this is an intense one. That means your muscles are working and they're opening up, so it is okay to shake. Drop your back knee down. Hands can go onto the blocks, level 1 or 2. Roll to the blade of your foot and then close it back down flat. Open from your hip to roll and close. Anytime we do rotation of the leg, it happens in our hip joint, never in our knee. Our knee is only meant to go forward and backward. Roll open and close. Open the hip, close the hip. Outward rotation, inward rotation. Out and in. Press your weight back. Lift yourself all the way up to a high lunge. And if you need, you can slide your block down under your knee and you'll tap your knee to the block and then extend the leg straight. Tuck and tap, extend. Tuck the pelvis as you bend to tap, extend the leg out. Tuck and tap, extend. Again, bend, extend. Lower down and straighten out. Down and straighten. Down and straighten. Then you can move the block out of the way, drop down onto your knee, pull back to your half split. And for this, you also might want to get off your mat and put a sock on your foot. It's a little easier to slide. You'll slide down just to as low as you can get. I don't want you to go all the way down if you can do a full split. And then you'll push with your hands and pull yourself back up. Flex your front foot, square the hips off. So your back hip is again trying to shoot down to touch the mat. Not your inner thigh. Think about the front of your leg, your quad, and your hip flexor coming down. You have 10 of these slides. You have to activate your belly and pull up through your hip flexor and through your hamstring to get that leg back up. Lower down and pull it back up. Knees go together, move the block off. And we are going to do all of this on the other side. So I will show you this without the block modifications. If you need them, keep using them. Starting by squaring off both of your legs, 90-degree angle, pull your belly button in and back, tuck your pelvis, and hold. 30-second hold. Really, really trying to tuck the pelvis, pressing your lower back into the back space. So your back could be flat on a wall if there was a wall right behind you. Press through your front heel to actively push back into your quad on the opposite side. Elbows are wide. Use the activation of your belly to tuck the tailbone under. Now release and shift the weight forward. You can scoot the knee out if you need to. Hands will go down. You'll lift your right arm up and over to take a stretch to the side. Again, feeling this deep stretch through the right hip flexor, all along the front part of your leg. 20-second hold, reaching and lengthening over. If you need a block under your hand, put a block under your hand. Lift up, change sides. Right hand goes down, left hand reaches up and over, side stretch. This one might be a little easier. Keep sinking down through your hips, keeping the hip bones squared off. Really important that you find that squaring because that's what we want to do in a split. We need our hips to be square. So the legs can go front and back. Come back to center, tuck and press the tailbone under, then release to sink. Tuck and press, sink down. 10 times. Tuck and press, release. That was number 3. Here's number 4. Tuck and sink. 5. Push the belly and release. Push the heel, pull the belly back and down. Tuck and release. Press it back, release it down. Push and sink. Back, forward. Hands down to the mat. Square the hips, extend your front leg, flex your foot. This time I'm showing it without blocks with my hands just down on the mat. But again, I don't want you to fold your body forward here. Really think about squaring the hips off, trying to pull back through your hips as you lift your toes up and extend the leg as straight as you can. You'll feel this on the back chain of your legs, so through your hamstrings and your calf muscles. 30-second hold. Find that straight line through your spine, including your tailbone. So your spine goes from your tailbone all the way up through the top of your head. The pointing of the toe, point and then flex. Point it down, pull it back, point, pull and flex. Point and flex. Point and flex. Your hips stay in the same position whether your foot is pointed or flexed. The spine is still long, and you should still feel this working through the back chain of your leg. Bend your knee, find your hip blaster. Make sure your weight is not right on top of your knee, but it's forward onto the thigh right above your knee. So it's sending the kneecap back so your weight isn't onto your kneecap. That's a lot of pressure on your knee. And anytime we're in any of these positions, you can also roll the mat up a couple of times and place it under your knee, or you can put a pillow or a blanket under there if your knee feels like it needs extra support. Keep your chest lifted, hands stay down. You lift your chest as you sink your hip down. And once again, a reminder to activate your front body. Use your core muscles to hold your belly up so that the lower back is being protected. If you feel a lot of pressure or weight in your lower back, you need to activate your front body more. We'll move into this deep lizard pose. You can do hands on the mat, hands on blocks, elbows on the mat. Back leg goes straight. Press your heel back behind you. Squeeze your inner thighs towards each other as you separate the space in between your legs. One leg is reaching back, the other leg is reaching forward. You're making your body pull apart. Pull up through your front body. Really try to extend that back leg straight. Release the knee down. Hands go back onto the mat and open and close your hip, rolling to the blade of your foot. Open and close. Roll it open, close it in. Roll it out and close it in. Open and close. From the hip joint, finding that rotation of the hip going outward and inward. Stand yourself up to your high lunge. Tuck your pelvis, press your hip forward. Hands behind the head, drop the knee down. Extend it back up. Again, if you need to put the block under your knee so you can not tap down as far, it's totally fine. Drop, press, extend the leg. Keep the tailbone tucked under as you bend the knee down, and then extend the leg as you lengthen the heel to the back wall when you stand. Touch and extend. 10 times with this. Tap and extend. Hands go down to the mat, drop your back knee, pull back into your half split. Then find that sliding, activating your belly to pull it back up. Again, feel free to put a sock on, move onto hardwood floor. Makes the sliding in and out a little bit easier. Really check in on your back hip on your right leg. It should not be opening out to the side. You want to keep that pointed down as you slide into that modified split and then pull it back up. Activate the quad to pull the leg up. Activate your hip flexor. Then release and let everything sink. So this is an active stretch. It helps the body to learn to let go and release after doing lots of hard work. Pull it back. Then come back onto both of your knees. And tabletop for just a moment. Cross the legs underneath you. Stretch your legs into a straddle position. So you're on both your sit bones. Doesn't have to be super wide. Just find your sit bones both down on the mat. Then bend your right leg and we'll do hip rotations. Turning the hip in and then letting it fall open. Closing and opening. Rotating inward. Rotating outward. You don't have to go all the way down to the mat. If that's too hard, you just do your inward and outward rotation, focusing on the hip joint, turning in and then opening back out. This is a really crucial action that we need to have for splits, is learning how to turn the hip inward. Switch sides. Left leg is up, you'll turn it in and then release and open it out. Inward, outward rotation. Your weight is back behind you on your hands to help make the rotation a little bit deeper and a little bit easier to move. In and out, 10 times on each side. Rotating in, opening it out, rotating in and releasing it out. Nice, feel good movement here. Come back to center. Extend both your legs out and then open them a little bit wider. Sit right onto your sit bones. Make sure you can stack your shoulders over your sit bones. Reach the right arm up and over. Take a side stretch. Here, you're checking in and making sure that both your sit bones are staying down onto the mat. Your legs are straight and point those toes. Inhale back to center. Exhale, right arm over, stretch to the left. And sink down. Really work to keep both the sit bones down and the hips openly rotated here. Come back to center. Hands onto the waist. Shift your chest forward. Your tailbone's going to point back, and you can have inward rotation of the hips as you touch down and lift back up. You do not have to touch. Just reach the chest forward as far as you can and then use your muscles to lift yourself back up 5 times. This is number 3. Reach forward, shift the tailbone back, reach the chest forward, and come back up. One more. Chest forward, tailbone back, and then stack the tailbone underneath you. Hands behind your head. Crunch your right side body together to try to place the elbow down on the mat. Then lift up and change sides. Crunch, tap, center, crunch left, and center. If your elbow doesn't touch the mat, don't worry about it. Just keep working that side body, really trying to pull it together and then extend it. Scrunch and extend. Right and center, left and center. Good. Hands back onto your waist, and one more time we'll shift the chest forward, tailbone back. Try to tap and lift. Shift forward and then lift it back up. Tailbone shoots back so the shoulders go forward. Chest forward, tailbone back, and then stack them back on top of each other. Find the rotation of the hips going back and then coming back underneath you. Hands behind your knees to close your legs together and windshield wiper side to side. Release the hips out just a bit. We'll take another stretch for the front of our body into our quad and our hip flexor. Right foot goes behind you. Your heel should be outside of your bum. Your left foot is going to stay flat on the mat with your knee bent. You can drop down onto your elbows if that feels okay. Otherwise, just stay on your hands. If you want to go all the way down and you feel like you can get all the way down and it doesn't put a lot of pressure on your knee, you're welcome to lay your body down. You should have a slight inward rotation of your leg, and you should really feel this on your front body, your quad, and your hip flexor. We'll hold here for 30 seconds. Your hands can rest on your belly. Practice those deep belly breaths here while you're holding in this pose. Over the course of this hold, You are also welcome to slowly move down levels. So if you started on your hands and you feel after a certain amount of time that you're open, you can move down to your elbows, and then from your elbows to your back. It doesn't have to be right away. To come out of this, press your elbows down, push your chest up, and lift yourself all the way up. Change sides. Left foot will go back behind you. Make sure your heel is outside of your bum. Right foot is down with your knee bent, and you'll move into your lowest level. Again, that moving into your lowest level can be at your timing. You don't have to do it when I do it. Everybody is different. Everybody needs different amounts of time to move into things. So you be smart and wise and listen to your own body. Again, wherever you're at, work on those deep belly breaths, filling the whole body three-dimensionally with air, and then allowing that air slowly to release back out. Just about finished here. Push with your elbows, lift your chest up, walk yourself back up. Slowly remove your leg from behind you. And we'll come into a squat, not a full squat, about halfway. Push your knees open with your elbows and shift your weight side to side. Try to keep that tailbone rotated down. So you're really creasing deeply in your hip flexors and this downward rotation. Hands onto the knees, push open and release. Push the hips open, release. Push and release. All the while trying to sink your hips down, down, down to the mat. Push, release, press open, release. Now come down to your deepest squat. You are welcome to sit on a block on the highest level, level 3, or to level 2. Or you can move the block completely and just sink down into a squat. Your elbows are on the insides of your knees. Your chest is lifted. And again, there's that downward rotation of your pelvis to sink the hips in between your legs. Hold it there. Now press your knees open and release. Hips open and release. Press, press. I say knees sometimes because that's really where you see it happening, but it's not the knees that are doing the opening. It's always the hips. And then try to sink down as low as you can and come to sit down. We are going to do a pigeon. So starting on your knees, you'll cross your right ankle over towards your left arm. And for this one, I want you to pull your foot in towards you. If you have big space between your hip and the floor, sit on a block or roll up a blanket and place it underneath you. Watch your hips. Make sure those hips are square, especially your back hip. It will want to open. Keep rotating that hip down. So your quad, your front, the meaty part of your leg on the front should be down on the mat. You want to rotate that inward so your quad is down and you're on the top of your foot. This is the position of your back leg in a split. Most of the time, your hip will want to open and turn out. That's where it naturally wants to go. It needs to turn inward and have your thigh onto the floor. Square those hips off. We're holding this pigeon pose for 30 seconds. Moving up, you'll lift your body and walk your hands up. I'm going to show this next one with two options. The first time, I'll show you with the strap, and the second time, I'll show you without. But either way, we're going to do this for 2 rounds. You'll make a loop with your strap, your leg will go behind you, and then you're going to use the strap to help rotate your leg and your hip inward. So from outward to inward rotation. release down, rotate it up. Open shoulders and hips, squared shoulders and hips. Opening and then closing it off. This is a really important action because again, we've got to work that rotation in the hip to get that back leg where it should be in a split. The hips need to be able to close off. Now close off, square the hips. Your toe should be pointed up to the ceiling. Reach back with your right arm to grab the strap. Push with your left arm to turn your hip inward and get more onto your thigh. So you're going to push your foot out behind you or to the back wall. And then I want you to hook your hand into the strap and turn your shoulders forward. So now your shoulders are square and your hips are square. This is what we want in a split, except our back leg would be extended. But the hips are squaring off here and our shoulders are forward. Inward rotation of your back leg, outward rotation of your front leg. Release the strap. Now we're going to do that same thing. You can repeat or you can do it with your hand. So same idea, you're going to rotate inward and then open it. Rotate. Use your hand to push your leg out and your hip in. Very gently. Again, make sure the rotation is from your hip joint and not pushing your knee into a kind of wonky position. Push, release. Close it and let it go. Push, hold it there. Square off your hips. You can either use the strap or if you're here, try to work your foot into your elbow. So your toes are coming into the crook of your elbow. And then lastly, you can try to rotate your fingertips forward and pull your heel in towards your bum. Square your shoulders and your hips off. Really, really big internal rotation of our hip joint here. And you can see that your back will have a slight arch. That's what will have to happen when you go into a split. But make sure you're still engaging through your front body. About a 20-second hold here. Then you can release the foot, plant your hands, push back onto your hands and knees, and we'll take all of that with our left leg. So finding the pigeon pose, and for this pose, I really want you to tuck that foot in this time so we can work more on the rotation of our hips. Feel free to put the block or the blanket if you need it, and then start to move down into your deepest pigeon stretch. You can see this a little bit better on this side, how your right hip should be rotated down to the mat. So if your hip bone is pointing out to the right and it's opening, you need to try to close it off by pressing the back of your hip down, rotating and pushing down so that your bony part of your hip bone is pointed down to the mat. And you're rolled onto your thigh and the top of your foot. Inward rotation with your leg that happens from your hip joint. Can't emphasize that enough, how important that rotation is in a split. Keep breathing. Almost finished. And we'll move into those hip rotations. Again, I'm going to show one time with the strap and one time without. So we have our loop. Put it around the foot, take a hold of the loop, rotate, turn in, release, open out. Inward, outward. 10 of these, finding the squareness as you rotate in, and then open, turned out as you go back down. Square it off and release. Square shoulders and hips, open shoulders and hips. Can see how those two work together. Keep working to pull that knee more down. The more inward rotation you have, the more your back foot will point directly up to the ceiling. Grab the strap, wrap your back arm around your foot, and pull your foot to the front. Now let's try to square the shoulders. Hand goes into the strap like you're serving a pizza. You'll pull your left shoulder back to try and square off through your shoulders. Keep rotating your back leg down to the mat. So your foot is trying to point more to the ceiling. Even thinking of it passing the ceiling and going to the front of the room may help. Release it out. Let's take our second round. You can keep the strap or do it without. Lift the foot, turn it in and out. Lift the foot as you turn the hip in, and then drop the foot as you rotate it open. Open and close. Open and close. Finding that hip rotation, pushing the hip down as you lift the foot, and then opening the hip as you drop the foot down to the mat. Turn it in, stay there, then try to pull your foot into the crook of your elbow, working to reach your shoulders to the front. That'll help a lot if you square off your hips. It'll be a lot easier to move your shoulders more in front of you. Lastly, you can wrap your fingers around the front of your foot, point your elbow back behind you, and pull the heel in towards your bum. This is a really deep quad stretch here. Lifting up through the chest and rotating the hip bones down to the floor. 20 seconds are up. Release your foot. Grab both of your blocks. Come back to your open straddle. Both sit bones down on the mat. One block is going to come inside of your legs. The other block is going to go on the outside of your left leg. You will lift your hips, then rotate your hip inward, outward, and sit back down. Lift the hips, rotate in with the back leg, turn the back leg out, sink down. 5 of these. Lift, turn it in, turn it out, and down. Even if you can't get as low, the focus is just to work that hip rotation so you can figure out how to work that back leg in a split. Turn it in, lift and turn it out to sit back down. Let's switch sides. Blocks on the inside and the outside of the leg. Press your hips up, feet stay down. Inwardly rotate your hip, outwardly rotate to sit back down. Press, turn it in, lift, sink it down. Hips are up, rotate inward with the back hip, turn it out. You can see how your front hip pretty much stays in turnout the whole time. It's going to rotate forward, but that back hip is really causing the action of the turning of the legs. Release, pull your legs back in, flop them out just for a second to release. And now we are going to do our full split. We've been working up to this all class. Right leg goes forward. You'll wiggle the toes out, sink down, find that kind of blaster pose with your back leg. Rotate your back hip forward and begin to sink. Your hands can stay on the blocks, and you'll slowly start to open your inner thighs to sink down. If you can come down to a full split, great. If you can't, keep holding. Watch that back hip is turned in. Then try to shift your shoulders up over your hips and square off. Keep rotating in with that back leg, working to put the thigh down towards the floor or on the floor. Toes are pointed. Extending both legs, make your knees as straight as you can. Have about a 30-second hold here too, so that we can really open up in our stretch. This is great. You're working on a split. This is an awesome, difficult position. To come out of this, press with your hands. Use your belly to pull up and slide your leg back up to a tabletop. Wag your tail side to side to release out. Let's do the other side. If you want to see this without blocks, I'll show you on this side. You can still lift yourself up without going into a full split and go a little deeper without the blocks. So you can just keep your body lifted using your hands to press. Keep rotating inward on your back hip, on your right hip this time. Make sure it's not open like this. Point it forward, forward, forward. Turn it in. Both legs are extended, both toes are pointed. If you can sink down, that's when you start to work your upper body on top of your hips. You'll still have that sway in your lower back, but you'll pull your body back up over your hips. Working to come onto your back thigh, rotating inward, inward, inward with your back leg. As you're holding, if your hips are still up, try to sink a little lower as we hold, getting closer to the floor. Use your hands to press yourself up and out of it, onto your knees, and again, take that little tail wag to release out. Way to go! You worked into your split pose today. Let's just take one more hip release. Come onto your bum, windshield wiper those legs. Easy does it. No force, no fight. Good. One more. Come back to center, cross your legs. And now let's massage out our hips. Put your thumb right into your hip crease and push into your hip crease. Your fingers on the back will massage your bum, and then you'll move up, massaging your quad out to your knee, and then back in towards your hip. Really work out your hip flexor, press the thumb into it, and massage your glutes with your other fingers. Just to release, feels kind of nice. Move your hands to your knees. Take a big breath. If you want to lay in Shavasana, you're welcome to do that. I hope you enjoyed this class today. Thanks for joining me.